We might start if that's okay. The first question I have is, can you give me a brief history of your life within the church and how you became a priest?
I joined the Redemptorists back in 1964, at the age of 17, and the Redemptorists is a religious community, and I was ordained a priest 10 years later. Worked mostly around Ireland, a bit out from my main work would have been a sort of an occasional preacher of events, missions, novenas, stuff like that. And then in the meantime, I began to write a good bit from say around 1990 on, and first just articles and then books, questioning a lot of what was going on in the church because I was aware that the thing was actually falling apart. And by 2012 I had come to the attention of the Vatican authorities, who objected to what I was writing, and I was forbidden to minister as a priest from then on, and that situation remains to this day.
My next question kind of follows on from that, and it's kind of related to what you just said.
Yeah.
So it's, when did you first start thinking of the importance of women carrying the same power as men in the church?
A long way back. Certainly in my early writings, which would have been in the early 1990s, it featured. When I began to think like that, I'd say going well before that. You see, I'm not a trained theologian, so that I was initially reluctant to go into the public domain on these issues, because I felt nobody pass any remarks to me because I haven't a string of degrees after my name. But when I got over that, from the 90s on, I suppose in nearly everything I've written, it has come into it in one way or another. Because, and to this day, it is the most basic thing that needs to be changed in the church, and that the credibility of the church is very much hanging on how it deals with the women's issue. So, in other words, it has really been very much part of what I would have argued for all the time. And it certainly, my views on it would certainly have influenced the church authorities in suspending me.
Did you start writing because of these issues, or have you always kind of been a writer outside?
Hadn't always been a writer, no. It was really because of what I was experiencing in the church and in religious life. And I suppose the way it builds up in you and you have a lot you want to say.
Yeah, kind of like an outlet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I suppose you kind of touched on this, but what do you believe are the reasons behind the church's kind of continued refusal and pushback to kind of allow women into these positions of power?
Well, it absolutely contradicts the message of the gospel, there's no question about that. Because it's clear from the Gospels as we have them that Jesus was particularly open to women and that he treated women as equals. Now, saying that, I'd also add to it that the Gospels were written between, say, 60 and 100 years after the time of Jesus. So that they were written by people who were part of a culture that downgraded women. So that even coming out of that context, we're still getting the message in the Gospels that Jesus had this particularly positive attitude of equality towards women, definitely. And then why, if I was to go to nowadays, I would say the most fundamental reason is the old question of power and control. Men have had control of the church for almost 2 millennia. Whoever lets go of control and power, if they can possibly hang on to it?
One question that I really wanted to ask you was, you received a lot of pushback from the Vatican and stuff like that, and I just kind of wondered, how has that affected your relationship with the church as a whole, kind of as a construct? Maybe even how has that affected your own faith?
You see, the action taken against me was taken by the Vatican. Well, that's not strictly true. It was taken by the Redemptorists under orders from the Vatican. But the Irish Redemptorists would have been quite embarrassed by the whole thing, because I got loads of publicity and it didn't come across well for the Redemptorists, and all of that. And anyway, like, good few of them would agree with some of what I'm saying. Some would agree with everything of what I'm saying. And then there'll be others who would think I'm a total heretic, but that's all okay. I'm incredibly lucky to have this. Margaret's 80 years of age, I'm 77, and I'm just hoping we can stay well, because the thought of going back into a monastery, which would be my other option, if anything happened to Margaret, I'd be back into a monastery. There might be a call for an overdose of tablets. You see, that in itself says a good bit about my relationship with church. Now, I also have found that since I stopped being a working priest, and particularly because, as I said, a lot of my thing was preaching, I have found that I'm much freer in my thinking and in my reading and my study and that. And as a consequence, my views on a lot of stuff to do with faith and God and all of that have changed quite dramatically. Wow. In other words, Kate, it has had a big influence on my life. But what I would want, and I know I'll never get this, but I just wrote a piece in my blog the other day on this, the process by which I was suspended didn't even have the slightest vestige of justice about it. I would like an acknowledgement that what was done to me was wrong in the way in which it was done.
I suppose I wondered as well, like, during these kind of years, has your faith ever kind of been brought into question in yourself?
Yeah. I suppose one of the biggest struggles I've had is to not get all bitter. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Because that's the worst thing that could happen to you. And I mean, ultimately, if that happens, it is yourself that are doing it to, you see. So, no, I think by and large I haven't done that too badly. And again, because of the things I was talking to you about, and because of the whole new opportunities opening up, and all the fascinating people I was meeting along the way. Like yesterday now, I was up in Dublin, Margaret and myself were up in Dublin. Friend of mine, a guy called Eamon Maher, who lectures in the what used to be the Tala Institute, is now part of TUD.
Yeah.
But also, what I found, you see, that would have been a world I had no involvement in ever. But I ended up meeting a lot of people who knew me and whom I had connections with, and we had a great evening.
Yeah. That's
okay,
brilliant.
Megs.
I am, yeah. How are you doing?
Sure, we're doing fine.
Good. You know, that's right, George.
She's asking a lot of. I'm warning Jonathan here.
Jonah.
No, it's Jonathan.
Jonah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Jonah. Sorry.
The last question to kind of sum up, I suppose, would be like, in your own experience within the church, and I'm sure you have you witnessed kind of direct instances where women have been directly marginalised or kind of pushed back?
Like, it's so much part of the system.
I think the problem is that women don't put themselves forward because they know what would happen.